Hey Twitch, welcome back. Yeah, I figured I'm gonna go ahead and work on some updates to LiveShowy. Kind of continue the work I did yesterday with role-based authorization, and so this will be a shorter live stream. I'm planning on going 2 hours, maybe with a break in the middle. So we'll see how that goes. and yeah, so before I get it to the project updates, I did a couple of updates to this Twitch stream itself. So I have tweaked the way that I noticed after yesterday's stream that chat messages were kind of hidden behind a couple of layers in some screens, and then they were just sticking around forever. And that wasn't ideal. So I've gone through each of my Twitch scenes because I'm using Twitch Studio, and hopefully things are looking a little bit sharper this time around. I've also, you may have noticed if you've watched a couple of these videos, updated the background, some of the just general kind of layout and things on the scenes. So I've got a new starting soon screen, which I'm really proud of. I've got I kind of added my LiveShowy logo to this and kind of created an official like building LiveShowy title card. So yeah, that's the logo, at least the V1 logo or V0 for LiveShowy. Came up with that for the Big Elixir talk. Also, what else? Just kind of touched up a couple of things in the scenes, and I'd noticed I got a couple new followers, so welcome to my new followers here. I'll keep an eye on the chat. It'll be off to the side, but I'll try to catch messages that come through. So let me shift things around a little bit, and then we'll start looking at code. All right, so just to catch you up, so yesterday I was working on role-based authorization. The idea is a user with a role should be able to do some set of actions. They should be able to perform some set of actions. And so that's the kind of the elevator pitch for role-based authorization. And a lot of times, traditionally with role-based authorization, you might even see it called role-based access control. A lot of times the role is associated with the user, and then the permissions are a lot of times like a string. In Elixir, you might use an atom that might say like, I think the example I was using yesterday was like a live stage. So you might say like live stage, like live underscore stage underscore create, or live underscore stage underscore view. And you might have different kind of granular permissions for each action that could be performed on a live stage. And a role could have not only permissions for a live stage, but permissions throughout the app. So if you think of like a couple of different roles, like we may have a musician role. Like a musician wouldn't necessarily be able to, kind of depends on how we build the app, but just for now, just imagine that maybe the musician cannot create a stage, but they could perform on a stage. Like a stage manager could create a stage, and they could basically do everything, including, I guess a stage manager wouldn't really perform. They would need a musician role for that. So yeah, that's kind of a high-level view of role-based authorization. And what I'm planning to do to implement permissions with LiveShowy is I want to create a permission schema. And I think this is going to live as an embedded schema inside of the roles. And so inside of the roles table, there will be a permissions column. Actually, it already exists. Currently, it's set to take an array of strings, which in the Elixir schema or in the Ecto schema, I could make that an array of atoms or a list of atoms. But that may not be granular enough, and that would require me to kind of translate those strings or atoms into, like I would have to look for specific strings and atoms throughout my code, and that seems like it would get kind of messy. So I think what I'm going to do instead, and we'll see how this bears out once I start putting the code together. But I want to have this permission schema that takes a module, which will be an atom. In the database, it'll be stored as a string, I believe. And then the permission, I think, is going to have a list or an array of functions that would be allowed for a person with this permission or a role with this permission. I think this is going to work. I'm just trying to think through, is there anything else that a permission would need? So let's take a look at, so I don't really have anything in the app that, I created like an example route yesterday and removed it towards the end before I merged the branch. But I don't have I don't have anything in the app that really is like cross-user. Like I don't have anything that's available to multiple users right now, aside from the landing page, which doesn't require authentication. But we could maybe find a live view to use as an example. So let's say that landing page was going to be, let's not even go that far. Let's just look at the kind of the structure of a live view first. So for a live view, we have, we define a module, and that is an atom that we pass in as the module name, and it's namespaced. So this one lives under LiveShowy web. We could have nested live views, or like they could be sorted into folders and namespaced even more deeply. So that's where I'm planning on using. So for landing live, if I wanted to make this, require a role or some permissions, then I would have the atom name for landing live as the value here inside of the permission. And then in functions, there's not a lot of functions here, but most live views will have render, which in this case might work as like a view. And then we have, within live views, we have a bunch of handle events. So let's look at another example. So for example, registered devices, we have all of these event handlers. Let me unfold all and then just fold. Oops. We'll do this. Okay. So we could maybe with this approach, we could say like, the atom would be the module name. So user live, LiveShowy web.userlive.registered devices. There could be a permission for this module that has handle event. The thing is, handle event is like a callback. So I don't know if this function list is really going to work for that. Because you could say, like maybe I want to allow a user to remove a key. This is just spitballing. This is not a real authorization thing, but like maybe I want the user to have access to create a key, but not to remove a key. So like just listing like the name of the function and the arity. This would be handle event /3. That wouldn't work here because it would either kind of allow or disallow all of the event handlers for this user. So what is another way to do this? Like I can kind of see how this would work. Not for live views, but more for let's say we wanted to add permissions around accounts. So I think this is a little bit more clear cut. So for, let's say we have some permissions for accounts. The atom, like the module would be the accounts module. And then the functions here are more clearly defined. So these, like you could say maybe like an admin would have permissions for, we could maybe just list all of the modules or all of the functions in this module. Or maybe another option would be like functions like is either a list or it's the value of all. Like that could make sense for some roles where you just want to be able, like you want the admin to be able to do anything that's in accounts. And you don't necessarily want to like have to update permissions every time you add or remove functions. So let me update the description here and kind of think through this a little bit more. So let's call this a module permission. I'm going to show like another example here where the value could be all. And then this would make more sense as like list users, list roles, something like that. Let's make sure those functions actually are in here. Are they not? Oh, maybe accounts just does not have a list users function. It's possible. List roles. So we could say, for now, we'll just say list roles and list user roles. So then this would be LiveShowy.Authorization. Okay. So if we're thinking about like an admin role, of course the admin would be able to do everything in authorization. Well, let's put a pin in that. Like you may not necessarily, we'll come back to that. So like for now, let's just for example, let's say that the admin role would have 2 module permissions. So we might need like different types of permissions for different structures or different, like we want to have flexibility here. So like an admin role might have a couple of permissions. These 2 examples would be, the first one's for LiveShowy.Authorization. So for that module, the admin would be able to list user roles and list roles. I think, is there anything in here that, yeah, I think the admin would want to be able to do everything in here as well. So like really, this would probably wind up being like an all atom, if that's the kind of the design that I'm going to land on. Let's think about some other examples. So musician. I think I can get syntax highlighting if I say that these are Elixir blocks. Sure enough, isn't that nice? Okay, so for this one, like a musician is more of a role about, this one's hard to think through because this is kind of thinking into the future about a lot of things that I've not designed yet, like instruments and collaborative spaces and that kind of thing. So let's say that a musician might have a module permission, which, let's see, LiveShowy, LiveShowy dot let's just say instruments for now. And then LiveShowy instruments. The functions that might be in there would be so let's say that maybe a musician has a module permission for LiveShowy.instruments, and the functions a musician role might have would be they could use get instrument and update instrument, just as an example. What about live views though? Maybe we need a live view permission, which has a slightly different shape. So it could also accept a module, because live views do have module names. So looking at the landing page here, or the landing live. So let's see, this would be LiveShowy web dot let's call it a collaboration room. Now, so again, I don't think it would, like, listing functions for a live view doesn't make sense, because they're basically all callbacks. You know, you might have some additional either private or public functions that you would add, but the things we're going to be checking against are mostly going to be probably handle event, maybe mount, but functions may not be the right way to describe permissions for a live view. I could go with the known path of using like atoms or strings. All right. I have an idea. So let's presume that a person with the permission for a live view, like we're not going to say you're permitted to mount and you're permitted to render. That just, I don't think makes sense. Like you just need to be able to, like the live view has to mount and render and update. But the handle event, handle info, those are where like the business happens inside of a live view. So I think here, this is where we can define permissions for a user based on specific events. So if we look at registered devices again, then let's say, and these would be strings. So let's see if this was a collaboration room, like one example of an event might be connect web MIDI. There's one, and then what's another one here? Let's say this is hard to do without actually kind of designing this module. Connect web MIDI. Save instrument. I don't think we even need to say instrument settings. We need to say save instrument. And then let's try to get one more event name in here. So a collaboration space I don't think is going to be like a form. It's going to be little bit different. So there's not really going to be a submit like we're seeing in this module. What else? A musician might be able to I want to say invite another musician, but I think that may need to be a separate role. Like you don't necessarily want to say like, all right, you let your best friend or like a new guitar player you met into the room and then they're able to just invite infinitely more people. I think you want like the room owner or the room manager. Like you want a specific role for that. One thing I'm seeing here is I don't think I really need a label for these because I think these just need to be self-explanatory, and you don't want to have a label that winds up being inaccurate because the permissions have changed. So I don't think I'm going to add a label to these permissions. I think module and functions or module and events might be the way to go. And actually, I think does it make more sense to call these module permissions or function permissions? Because I'm listing the functions that are allowed, not just the module. But the module's important because otherwise what functions are you talking about? Okay, so function permissions I think makes sense, and then live view permissions I think also makes sense. Yeah, and then I don't think we have to define like info messages that would be allowed because those are not actually driven by the user. Those are driven by the server. Those are so in live view, there's handle event, which is basically reacting to either form submission or button clicks or key events or even like JavaScript events being pushed to the server. That's all driven by the user, so those do need to have permissions. But like handle info is where you can you can subscribe to pub sub topic, and then the server is basically telling your live view process that some event has happened on that topic or a message has been passed. That may be the result of some user action, but that's not directly, like a user does not create an info event. So I don't think we have to worry about permitting those per se. Those are typically kind of driven from events, if anything at all. Okay, so that gives me a couple of ideas for permissions that we might need and different structures. Is there other ways that we would want to, or are there other ways we would want to are there other permissions we want to check? So a user is mostly going to be interacting with a live view. I think live view permission could even be used on components. So maybe it makes sense to call that a live permission. It would work on live views. I think that would work on live components as well. Okay, let's use these examples as a guide, and then maybe issues will arise as we start to actually put the code together. So let me do this. By the way, I forgot to mention another thing I did with the updates to my scenes is, well, this isn't actually the scenes that I updated. My main monitor is a 4K monitor. nothing super special. But that means that anytime I screen share with someone, I have to zoom everything all the way in, and there are some pieces of UI in some apps that just won't zoom in. So like I noticed that the URL bar was kind of tiny and hard to read. The titles of these tabs, not that they're important necessarily, but kind of the more important one was in Postico. So if I connect to LiveShowy.dev, like the column headers were just so tiny that there was no, and zooming in would affect only the row text and not the actual column headers. So yeah, hopefully by setting my 4K monitor to 1080 while I'm streaming, or I'm probably will do this even whenever I'm, pairing with people, or during work sessions if I'm screen sharing. Hopefully just down-resing to 1080 will make that all a little bit easier to follow without having to constantly zoom things in and out. All right, so let's start by adding a schema for a permission. Now there's a couple ways to do this. There is a Phoenix generator for, maybe it's an Ecto generator for a schema. So anytime you want to see the list of commands that are available, or the generators that are available within a Phoenix project, you can do, or even within Elixir, you can do mix help. So got a bunch of things we could do here. So just with Ecto, I could run Ecto. Well, I don't see, there's not like a gen. So this is how I generate migrations. There's mix ecto.gen.migration. But what I actually want would be schema. So actually what I want is an embedded schema, which is a little bit different. And I haven't created one of these in a while, so I think I will use the generator just to kind of see, like, what does it create? What's like the kind of the default or the best starting point for an embedded schema? And maybe I can explain embedded schemas a little bit later. So mix, what is it? Phoenix.gen.embedded. Probably needed to give it a name. So you can see I didn't give it a name or any attributes. Another thing I can do, so it'll give you a nice little warning, but if you want to see a little bit more information, you can always type help between mix and the command. So this is really nice. I love Elixir and Phoenix documentation. This not only tells me the options that I can pass, but in this case, since I'm talking about creating like a schema, even an embedded schema, it shows all of the different types that I can provide. So let's see here. I'm going to say authorization dot permission. And then I'm not creating a table because this is just an embedded schema. So it doesn't live in its own table. It lives within the roles table. So what's going to be in a permission? Oh, remember I was going to call these different things. So function permission is going to be a module, which is an atom. And then it's going to be functions, which is an array of atoms. Is that right? Or should they be tuples? I think whenever we use, like, I think whenever you're, I don't know how to describe what I'm seeing here. So let's see, anytime you're using, like, say, an imported function and you want to use only, or you want to only import one or two functions, I think those normally would show up as tuples. Just looking for an example. I need to just do a search here. Here we go. Okay, so this should actually be a keyword list. Or a map, maybe. Okay, so the options we have here, map, array, daytime, binary, daytime, okay. So here's the problem with what I wrote earlier. These are actually, like, say at least when we use them, functions look more like this. That's probably a confusing way to explain it. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and update that comment before it gets lost. So, like, say whenever we're like importing a function, this is the module that it comes from. You can say I only want to import these functions. So this is the function name and the arity. You can have a function with, so you can see get flash has a couple of different versions with like an arity of 1 or an arity of 2. And that's basically how many arguments can you pass into the function. Same thing with view module, view template. Each of those only has one argument that they will accept. But that's a keyword list that we're seeing here. And I think maybe I need to jump into IEX just so I can kind of understand what I'm doing here. So let's say, just to use the example above, so get flash 1, get flash 2. What if those were in a map? Okay, so that wouldn't work. So map keys are unique. Keyword keys are not unique. Now, what if I take, okay, so that's the keyword list. What if I have a list of tuples? Can I make that into that? So let's see, get flash 1, get flash 2. That didn't work. That works. Okay, so to store these in the database, I know this is confusing. So can it be an array of tuples, and then does the tuple need to have its own definition? Yeah, this is making this complicated. All right, so let's see. Let's look at embedded schemas just to get, I got to refresh my knowledge here. So okay, so this is how we're going to probably embed. The schema is probably going to be actually embeds many. embeds one. Let's see, embeds many. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. Embeds many indicates an embedding of many schemas. I wonder if these like function permissions need to be in a column separate from live permissions. The current schema has 0 or more records of the other schema embedded inside of it. Embeds have all the things regular schemas have. Recommended to declare your embeds many filled with type map in your migrations instead of using array map. Ecto can work with both maps and arrays as a container for embeds, and in most databases, maps are represented as JSON, which allows Ecto to choose what works best. Okay, so whenever I put my next migration in place, I'm going to probably just remove the existing permissions column and then, well, either update that to be a map or update that to, or like replace it with separate columns for module and live permissions and maybe additional permissions in the future. Embedded, maybe not. Okay. So let's just try this. Let's just try this embedded schema the way it is and then go from there. Nope. Okay, so I can't use Atom as a type. I guess module has to be a string, at least in the at least in the database. Huh. I wonder if Ecto Schema can allow atoms. Guess not. Yeah, Atom's not even listed in this schema. Okay, so the that's okay because we can actually kind of hook in to the it's not gonna let me put tuple in there either, I don't think, but so we can convert strings to atoms and atoms back to strings. That's fine. Ecto, I think, will handle the atom to string conversion for us anyway. Yeah, it's not gonna like tuple. I'm not sure if this design that I have in mind is actually gonna work. So like I'm trying to not list a permission for every single function or every single event. if I'm going to do that, I might as well just have a dedicated table for these things. I think anyway. So I can't use a map to list functions because we can have, we can have 3 functions with the same name, and a map can only have, like, those would just override each other because map keys are unique. So the function name would be the map key. And if you think, okay, well, we just flip and use the arity as the key, well, you're going to have multiple functions with the same arity, or with, like, you're going to have multiple functions with 0 arity, multiple functions with 1 or 2 arity, and those are going to override each other as well. So it is a little bit, I wonder if I need to tell it what type of array. So functions is going to be an array. But what am I going to put into the array? Is it an array of maps? I'm starting to have the feeling that maybe I'm going to have to create like a custom type for this. Not something I necessarily would like to get into. Let's see. Okay. Don't want to necessarily write these in as a big string that gets parsed either. That's an option for sure. Like, you basically just kind of take that list that you see there on the screen, get /:1, get /:2, stringify it, and then parse it when it comes back into the app. But I don't like that. So this problem could just be solved by having one permission. So this would be module functionality. Yeah. You know what? That's the I think the Elixir way, maybe even the Erlang way. So here we go. We're going to make function permission apply to only one function. And you'll see how this works. Okay, so I'm thinking through this a little bit and thinking, okay, so then we do have a separate need for a module permission, because you, like I said earlier, like, you might want to have one permission that grants access to everything inside of a module, say for an admin, and you may also module permission module showy.accounts functions. Here, I don't think we would list the arity. I think we would just list the names of the functions. So this would be functions list users, get user by email, so on and so forth. So then here, this would be is this going to work? So function permission for this module, allow this function with this arity. Arity is a word, right? Am I spelling it right? Yeah, look at that. Arity. A-R-I-T-Y. All right, why is Google complaining? There we go. Okay, so a function permission applies to one function with one arity. Module permission applies to multiple functions or all functions. And then module function. Yeah, that could work. Okay. So I think for module permissions, we may list multiple module permissions. We may list multiple functions that are allowed, but we're not going to be so granular that we declare which arity of a function is allowed. So I think that's going to do what I need. Now if I come back into here, gen embedded authorization function permission. So this is going to be function, I guess it's a string, and then arity would be integer. Yeah, integer. Okay, and then this is going to be a module function or a module permission. Oh, so many words. Module permission is going to take a module name and a list or an array of strings. And then I guess this would have to be a list. So this would be like if it has the atom all, then in the list, then it gets all the functions. And then a live permission. So module and then events. All right, so now we have 3 new permissions. Function permission, module permission, and then live permission. All right, so does this make sense? First, let's document what we have here. I don't know if you can hear my neighbors. Got some motorcycles down the street. They love to go for joyrides. Okay, schema defining. All right, so a live permission is going to be a schema defining a permission for one or more events in a live view. I think that makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and copy that so I can kind of keep the formatting consistent. Schema defining a permission for one or more functions in a module. And then this one should be pretty easy. So a function permission is a schema for defining, or a schema defining a permission for one function. Module permission is a schema defining a permission for one or more functions in a module. And then live permission is a schema defining a permission for one or more events in a live view. And here I will pause to talk a little bit about role-based authorization and what it is used for, or at least how I'm going to use it in this app, and then some things that it can't do. Or like, so this is not, so role-based authorization is a way of kind of grouping permissions together, giving it a name, or like giving it some context so that it can be used. Like the way I'm defining these with a module, I should make it easy within like the router or like a session hook to like whatever the live view is to pull that module name and assign the events that are allowed or something into the socket, or something like that. TBD. And then for function or module permissions, those could be a little bit more granular, just checking for permissions directly in the modules or in the function heads, or I mean, somewhere in the function. So it works for like kind of broadly defining access to either actions or kind of zones within an application. But there's a kind of a separate concern for authorization that you have to factor in. So like, say a musician could list instruments maybe, but you don't necessarily want them to be able to list all instruments in the system. You might only want them to be able to list instruments that they own. Just throwing out, just kind of spitballing here. So for that, a musician would need, like they would need a musician role with the permission that says list instruments. And then additionally, you may need a separate permission that says, or like some application logic that makes sure that we're only pulling in instruments for this user. So like instruments assigned to or owned by or whatever the structure is, kind of constraining the things that are the instruments that are listed to the ones that user actually should be able to access. So there's a lot more to think about with that. I just wanted to kind of call out that role-based authorization is not the be-all, end-all. It's kind of a piece of the authorization puzzle. And I'm kind of tailoring this to fit the needs of my application and kind of the way I envision using these permissions. But role-based authorization might look wildly different. Like implementation might look wildly different within another app. By the way, you don't have to rely on me for all this knowledge and expertise. Definitely not an expert here, but I've read a couple of white papers and let's see, role-based authorization. So anytime I'm trying to study up on a subject or topic, first thing I'll do is I'll go to Google or a search engine, whatever engine you trust. And for something like this is a kind of a common pattern within the software industry. I think even within like hardware industry, like you'll see role-based authorization, or role-based access control to like say buildings and that kind of thing. So that brings up another idea. So like, let's say you have role-based authorization for like a building. You might have like a manager can unlock the conference room, they can unlock the building, but they cannot unlock the server room. And then like a regular worker cannot unlock the building, cannot unlock the conference room. Those have to be unlocked by a manager. And then an IT person could unlock the building. They probably could unlock all the rooms, honestly. So your authorization system would consider those, like it would check those roles and permissions, but it would also check to make sure that it's only checking those permissions for the building that those workers are authorized for. So that's not only do you need to check the role of the user, but you need to check like maybe a location, like a location-based authorization. I don't even know if that's a thing, but yeah. So definitely do a little bit more research if you're building a system like this. Okay, for what I'm building, I think this is going to do what I need. So if I'm imagining like a session hook for live permission, you would, whenever you're like on mount, you would have access to the live view module that's being mounted. So you could check the user's role to see if it has any permissions with that module. And then if they have permissions for that module, you can go ahead and continue with the socket, load the module. And then the next step is, how do we check that a user can perform like one of those handle event, like can a user perform some event? One way to do that is just within the event handler, check the permissions of the user and see if that handle event is in there. Or maybe when the socket is assigned, probably in the session hook, you might like assign like an allowed events list so that you don't have to query or pull those things out of the user schema within every event hook. You could, if you had like an allowed events list on the socket, then that makes it a little bit easier to like check that the event is in the socket within either pattern matching or within a guard. So I think that's where we want to land. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in my notes here as well. So in the session hook, check for if user has permission for module, continue, assign and what else? In event handlers, use pattern matching or guards to authorize events. Put flash or I'll just say alert because I don't want to necessarily prescribe exactly how it's done, but I want to alert user if event is not allowed. Okay, that makes sense, at least for now. So the plan is for live permissions, we're going to check for the LiveView module name and the user's permissions. Those are going to come from the role that a user might have, or the roles. So within each of the roles, do they have any permissions with the module name that's being requested? If the user does have permission for the LiveView module, assign allowed events with list of events from the permission. And the event handlers use pattern matching or guards to authorize events, and then alert the user if the event is not allowed. And then I also need to say if user does not have permission for LiveView module, alert user and halt socket. So yeah, the last step there is if the user does not have permission for a LiveView module, alert the user, redirect to something, and then halt the socket. I'm not sure what the redirect would make sense here. Maybe to the previous view or path or route or whatever. Or maybe the landing page, kind of depending. So that may be a case-by-case basis. We'll kind of see how that plays out. Let's see, I've been going here for just over an hour. I think I've got another 30, 45 minutes I can keep going here. So again, if you're listening, shoot a message in the chat. I'd love to see if anyone's got ideas, got notes, or questions about what I'm doing here. Okay, so I think the permission structures look like they're going to work for what I need. Except, I don't know. I'm kind of, as I was typing this earlier, I was kind of also thinking, as nice as it is to be able to list several functions within a single permission, I could see that being confusing in the future. Like why do we list functions with the function permission sometimes, and then why sometimes do we use module permission, which is actually a list of functions, but without the arity in one place where there's an arity in the function permission. And like this all list here, which there's a typo, but that I don't think even makes sense because like there may be I don't know why, whatever, have a function named this terse, but there could be potentially be a function called all, and maybe you'd want to allow that and not others. So I think we're going to do away with the idea of multiple functions inside of a module permission. I don't even know if a module permission makes sense at all. Like for an admin, it might seem a little bit, it might be unmanageable to keep updating the list of functions that are in a module, which would be required if we're doing like a function permission for every single function. If you have to list all the functions that are created throughout the app in order for an admin to do their job, that may be a recipe for headaches. And I don't like headaches if I can avoid them. So I think what I'm going to do here is maybe module permission is just the name of a module. Is there anything else that would need to go in here? Let's see if we look at accounts. So sometimes in Elixir and Phoenix, you'll see like there's a kind of a pattern of only or except, and that's usually a list of functions or a list of environments or things like that. But I don't know if that even, I don't even know if I think I'm going to keep it simple for now and then grow module permission later. And then for a musician, they're not going to be actually interacting with modules directly anyway. So like a user of the app is only going to really need live permissions if I'm imagining things correctly. So I think that makes sense. I think function permission makes sense. I think module permission makes sense. Okay. So module permission now is a permission for all functions in a module. Schema defining a permission for one function. And I think actually, so module, I was thinking, just waffling a little bit. So it crossed my mind that like an admin, let's say an admin using the web interface of this app, like even then they wouldn't need function and module permissions because they wouldn't be calling those directly. They'd be accessing live views, and then they would have access to maybe all events in the live view. But there is potentially a use case where an admin would be signed into the app through the terminal, through the console, and they might actually call functions within a module directly. So yeah, I think the struggle that you're seeing right now is like premature optimization. Like I'm just trying to solve all the problems here, maybe a little bit too early. So let's say that for now we do not need module and function permissions because that's going to be an extremely edge case, I think, where like a very special user, like a dev or something, is going to be hacking into not hacking, but like getting access to the console and doing things. But even then, they're not really signed in. Yeah, so let's get rid of those function and module permissions, and let's focus for a change just on live permissions. Because I think that's going to be the day-to-day use case for this thing. So I think what I would do here is I would need to need a new authorization. I'm going to create a new folder because I'm starting to see a couple of files that need to be grouped together. So I'm going to put authorization and init assigns inside of session hooks. Go ahead and give them a namespace. Going to go to the router. Going to look for this. That's our problem solved there. What else? Def module, LiveShowy web, session hooks. Oops. Dot authorization. So module doc. I'm going to be consistent and capitalize live view and live views. So authorization is going to be session hooks for authorizing access to a live view and events within a live view. So this would be on mount, default, what is it, params, session, which is like the plug connection session, not important here, and then socket, which actually should have current user. I'm going to go ahead and alias the user, alias LiveShowy.accounts.user. So I'm going to make sure that this function only runs whenever there's actually a user in the socket without any typos. We'll say for now, just continue with the socket. And then there's going to be a lot more going on there here in a moment, but for now, I'm going to add a fallback in case you access the page without a current user. For now, we're going to just let that continue. And the reason for that is actually, let me get these things out of my fingers before I socket do error. You must be signed in. And then if we're halting, we have to redirect. So redirect to routes. Routes dot user, I think it's login path, socket log in. Login without the underscore. log in. Else. All right, so once I fix this error, I will explain what's going on here. Okay. Just trying to make things look nice and consistent. Oh, and I should probably, before I start committing stuff to the main branch, I should probably actually open a branch. Okay. So I'm going to update this issue, and then I'm going to create another one for module permissions. Let's see. All right. I think I'm going to get a place to take a quick break. So I will be back in just a moment. If you're watching, get up, stretch your legs, grab a drink, grab a snack, whatever you need. I'm going to come back, hopefully not be super hoarse, but I'll be back here in just a moment. Gotta feed the cats. on permissions. Fun stuff, right? Okay. So thanks for bearing with me through the break. And let's see, where do we leave off? We had added kind of some initial authorization hooks. Okay, so required logger, not really logging anything yet here, but I guess I can share my screen. So, okay, so I've got my session hooks for authorization started at least. And then what I'm doing down here, I'll start at the bottom actually. So if there's not a current user assigned to the socket, then it's going to hit this version of the function of the mount hook. And at that point, if the socket is connected and there's no user assigned, then we need to halt. This is kind of an extra check. This really shouldn't happen because this session hooks can be used in conjunction with init assigns, which should already take care of this piece. But on the off chance that, say, a year from now, we're moving fast, breaking things, and this authorization hook gets used without init assigns, I can entirely see that happening, probably by mistake. Then I want to still catch that connected socket with the missing user, because at that point there's no user to be, there's no user roles if the user is not actually signed in. So, but this version of onMount with default is important because if the socket is not connected, there's no assigns on the socket in that case, and I just want that will happen whenever you go to a page, say you refresh the page or you type in the URL to a path, and even if you're logged in, the very first page load is an HTTP request, so the socket would be mounted without any assigns for like a few milliseconds before the user would be assigned. So that's why sometimes if you're working within a live view, you might see like a little bit of a flash. There may be some ways around that, but for now, this is just going to allow that the socket can continue if there's no user, only if it's not yet connected. So that's just kind of catching that one scenario. With that out of the way, so otherwise we're going to tell the error that you must be, or we're going to tell the user that you must be signed in, and then redirect it to the login path to be logged in. So that should kind of serve as a good fallback. Now here we're getting a squiggly because I haven't actually used current user. So here is where I think the user struct has roles on it, right? Right. Okay. For now, just to get the squiggly line to go away, I'm going to say get current user dot roles, and just going to put that there, just so it's kind of like a bookmark of like, hey, this is where you want to start next. We're not actually ready for this. I just wanted to kind of get this idea into writing first. Okay, so we'll come back to that. We've got our association already set up. That's already been working. And then we're not going to deal with the router. We're just going to look at the live permission for a moment. So live permission is, I think we're actually going to make the module the first thing that shows up. I think we do want to use, so I saw a note in here earlier about primary keys. So, you know what, I need to pull open the role schema. So a role is actually going to have, so I'm going to leave that, I'm going to comment that out, and this is going to be embeds many. And then this will be live permission. Which needs to be aliased. So we're going to say alias LiveShowy authorization live permission. That fixes that. And then schema options and then list. So this is the embeds one. I need embeds. Embeds many. Okay. So I think I need to go ahead and create my migration to update the roles table. So gen.migration update roles permission. Okay. So here we're going to alter, alter table roles do. I think remove is the keyword here, or the macro for permissions. Create roles. And I think I've also got to give it the same. I think this is how that should look. And then we're going to add live permissions as a map, which cannot be null and would default to a map. I don't think there was any indexing happening on permissions. Nope. So I don't have to deal with that. I'm not sure if I run this and post-to-co is open. So I know you can't drop a table with post-to-co being open or connected to that database. I'm kind of curious if we can like drop a column and add a column. I know we can add columns, but I wonder if we can remove a column while post-to-co is connected and open. So let's just find out. Ecto.migrate. Let's find out how wrong I am. Ah, it worked. Okay, so let's take a look at post-to-co. Cool. Okay, so live permissions for this admin role is empty. That's fine. I think I created that during the last live stream, but that's fine. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and delete this because this, like I know the table's fine, but that admin role doesn't actually line up with how it's going to be used currently. So I just want to get that out of the database. Okay, so from here, the migration's good. I'm going to go ahead and commit that. Oh yeah, I moved init assigns. So I'm going to go ahead and commit that as well before I make any other changes that would confuse Git. Move. So that only touched the router and the new file, or the file that was moved. Okay, and then for the role, okay, so I can go ahead and remove this commented line. So it's going to embed many live permissions, which should have the structure of a live permission. Forgive me for being a little bit cramped here on my 1080 resolution. Okay, so embeds many. Okay, so I'll have to use a change set to manage embeds, which is fine. Okay, primary keys are automatically set up for embedded schemas as well, defaulting to ID binary generated true. Perfect. That's what I want. You customize it by passing primary key option, blah, blah. Defining embedded schema in such a way will define parent-child module, appropriate struct, in order to properly cast. I don't need to overwrite the default primary key thing, so okay. So I think aside from updating the chain set, I think the role schema looks the way it needs to look. So the example here is embeds many items with a type of item. So I've got live permission actually declared in a separate module. It actually has its own change set, so that may simplify things for me, actually. Okay. So role, permission, live permission. All right, maybe I need to start doing some tests here. Maybe I can kind of TDD this piece of the app. Yeah, I think that's the way to go forward. So authorization test. We already should be testing create role, and that's where this is going to, that's where all the important stuff's going to happen. So let me collapse everything that's not about creating roles. So this is where we're going to manage permissions that are going to be created as well. By the way, I'm hitting probably about the end of my live stream here. I've got probably another 10, 15 minutes. So if you're watching and you're not chatting, just jump in, fire away, and we'll talk. Let's see. All right, let's read through these docs again. So embeds many, recommended to declare field map. Did I do that? Let me just make sure. Yep, okay. Live permissions is a map. So Ecto can do whatever it wants with the map, basically. Okay, and then you know what? I probably should not have a default value there. Like, I don't want the database to just be like, oh, well, we'll got an empty map, and we'll just have a role with no permissions. I think we want the database to say, look, you didn't provide any permissions or any live permissions, so it should report back that there's an error if there are no live permissions provided. With that, I think I'm going to go ahead and roll back and then migrate again. Okay. Okay, so I removed. I'm not sure in the schema if I say let's see, IX. Is this going to even compile? Nope. Yeah, so it does have to be a string here. Yeah, I would love to have a list of atoms in the events, but I think for the schema, it's got to be a string. That's fine. Yep, okay, that fixed the compilation issue. All right, so all it does now is it says that it will accept the module and events, so those will be casted, and then it will require the module and events as well. I think for here, I'm going to say, so in the database, I don't want to have a default value, but in the live permission schema, do I want to have, do I want to have a default? I don't think I need a default here. All right, so I'm just going to commit this live permission, a couple of these other changes as well. Okay. So my work is safely in GitHub now. In case something happens to this poor little laptop I got over here. All right, so within the next 8 or 9 minutes, is there something I can accomplish here, or should I be wrapping up? Honestly, it's been a minute since, probably been a couple of years since I've actually set up a schema that used embeds. So this might be a little bit thorny the first couple of times I try to create something. I could try to do this manually, or I could do what I said I was going to do a minute ago and actually start writing a test or updating a test. Oh, actually, the role is being created as a fixture. So if I'm going to update authorization, I would actually need to update the fixtures here. Okay, so I need to alias LiveShowy authorization live permission. Oh, let's say actually landing. So this will be like the most basic permission. It gives you permission to the thing that everyone already has access to. And landing live has no events. So anyway, that serves the purpose of like a test permission. So, okay, we'll have a user, we'll have a role. Okay. I think let's just run test and see what happens. "20 failures because we're not casting the embed, I think." Yeah, cast. Okay, put embed. Okay, so in role, we need to cast embed. Is that the way you do? Live permissions. Let's try that before we hit update the change set. Nope. Let's open a new tab and take a look at cast embed. Casts the given embed with the change set parameters. Parameters for the given embed will be retrieved from params. Those parameters are expected to be a map with attributes similar to the ones passed to cast. Match those parameters with the embeds already in cast association. For example, working with cast associations would also apply for embeds. The change set must have been previously cast using a cast. Okay, duh. So yes, this will be required. True. Invalid message. Okay, so it defaults to the change set of the embedded module, which is this. So cast association should be, that seems right. Let's just find out. No change. So the example here in the other doc was for using put embed. I would do that if I was actually, defining the permissions inside of the role change set, but I'm not. Like it's going to be passed in. Oh, okay, yeah, duh. I still had permissions as being cast in the change set. Okay, hopefully we got a different error at least. Expected params got to be a map. Oh, cool. Okay, cool. So this Should just be a function. Okay, so we're making progress. We're seeing different errors. Module is invalid. Type string validation cast authorization live permission. Okay. Oh, it really does want a string to be in there. Well, that can I put an empty string to get the test to pass? Probably not. No, because it's got to be. Can't be an empty string. Events. So this is not how I intend to use this in the future, but we're going to go ahead and just put some dummy mount and render events into that permission. No, still getting an error. What's going on? Okay. Changes inserted by admin live permissions. Okay, so we're getting the error and the live permission change set. Module is invalid because it needs to be a string. Okay. Well, we've fixed the tests, but that's not how I want this to actually look. I've hit 2 hours. Let me just take a quick look here and see if it jumps out to me what I need to do. Okay, you know what? Let's just leave this for next time, or maybe I'll deal with this before the next week. So, like, ideally, I just want to be able to pass in the atom of the module and not have to stringify it. So I think what I'll do is I'll update the live permission so that it will automatically, I don't know if I have to do a custom type to do this or if I can just kind of hack away it during the change set. But I think what I want to do is, you know what, I think that's actually something fairly easy to do. So let's see. Okay, so I can do update change. Let's try this bonus round. Let's see if this works. Will it work? Will it work? Will it work? No, it won't. Mount is invalid. Type string. And it won't take an atom here. Okay, maybe I'm gonna have to do some research. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, since I did a custom type for the coast key, for the authentication thing, WebAuthn, I may need to do a custom type here. I may just need to deal with just always converting things to strings. That's not the developer way though, so there may be, I mean, there should be a way somewhere in here that I can do something like this. It may not be update change, but it may be, Yeah, because I think cast, it's not even getting to update change because cast is trying to cast a module, which is supposed to be a string, but it's coming in as an atom. And I don't know. Let's just see if I move that up, if that helps. It's going to fail horribly. Yeah, didn't work. Yep, I gotta look up some. I gotta do a little bit of research on this. So yeah, I will deal with atom to string conversion and so on and so forth later. For now, I'm going to fix that test so I can commit the code in a working version and then be confused next week whenever things go awry. So I'm going to remove that unused alias, get this all committed. Okay. Sweet. So one last time before I close and go to bed. Just make sure the tests are passing. I want to leave it in a functioning state here. Cool. Okay. Good. So I will be coming back to this probably during the week, getting things tidied up a little bit there. Again, if you ever want to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at, my username is @OwenBickford. I actually have a poll going right now. Let me open that up over here. So I have a poll about which talk I should give if I propose another talk. So let me minimize this. All right, so I had some ideas for talks that I could propose to, say like for ElixirConf or something later this year. And I could really go in a few different directions. I may even have a couple more ideas, but these are the three that I jotted down and wanted to kind of get feedback before I start coming up with ideas and writing slides and writing a proposal for the talk. So if you're watching and you're on Twitter, you can go to @OwenBickford. That's my account. This is pinned to my account currently as of May 22nd. And you can vote. Like, which talk should I propose? Should I propose a talk focusing mostly on WebAuthn over LiveView, which is the kind of the previous few weeks that I've been live streaming mostly about that? I could do a talk about CI, or continuous integration optimization, so talking about Circle CI or GitHub Actions. Like, how can you speed up your Elixir CI pipeline? I've got some ideas about that. That would probably not be. That would be a shorter talk, probably not as beefy as the WebAuthn. And then the one that's obviously not getting as much love, so maybe got a couple votes in there. So thanks to whoever voted for LiveShowy Web, the thing I'm working on. But yeah, so if you're interested in contributing feedback to maybe my next talk, that would be the great place to start. If you want to see my first talk, go to Big Elixir channel on YouTube. And this is me right here. You don't actually navigate. I navigate you. So, so yeah, so that's from New Orleans Big Elixir at the end of March. The video was released at the end of April, and yeah, that was a fun demo. So in the video, the demo didn't work. So I started the demo quite early in the talk, and I think there was just a little bit of lag with people getting connected to Wi-Fi, and like the application over Wi-Fi wasn't quite working well. Maybe it was because there were 100 people trying to hit it at the same time. I'm not entirely sure. But I think there may be a bonus video released later this week or like later this month about like there may be a follow-up video that shows the Q&A where I actually did get to see the demo working as intended. Of course, that was it was like the prototype for LiveShowy. And this was based on kind of allowing 100 people, 100 plus people in a room to connect to the server and play media events through the browsers. So anyway, thank you if you have been watching live. Thank you for watching. And if you've followed me, even better. I will be back Saturday. I'm trying to keep this regular. Saturdays 2 to 4 p.m. is what I'm committing to. And that's Eastern Daylight Time, or Eastern Local Time anyway. And yeah, if I have extra energy, I tend to go a little bit longer than 2 hours. And then if I have more to work on Sundays, then I might even jump on like I did today. So thank you so much for joining me. Again, you can find me on Twitter at Owen Bickford. You can see some of my ugly public projects at Type 1 Full. I promise my code nowadays is way better, more thoroughly tested, and probably more fun to look at too. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.